about the topic which was given to me by Professor Rajni Gupta and all in consensus with the higher authorities. After thanking each one of you from core of my heart, now I talk about the Himalaya of the Indian region, because they are not only belonging to us, we have Himalayan range from Pakistan area and beyond that, and also going up to beyond the eastern side of it. So Himalaya of the Indian region we'll be focusing on, which consists of about 4 hotspots of biodiversity. And by virtue of my association during my job over here in the LBPGR for more than 35 years, I was working very closely to the plant genetic resources collection, identification and their conservation. And one of the topic for your Botanical Society on the event of Himalayan Divas was the conservation of environment, in which the plant genetic resources are directly coming into picture. So with that one, first of all, as Rajni ma'am has already indicated that recently, on this occasion, I would like to share my thrill with all of you that recently, in the past 15 days of time, I have been able to get one acceptance from one of the best journal, in which I have described a new species from tribal area, which was being cultivated for past 100 years or so. And I have tried to describe it and to name it, and this has entered into the taxonomic literature at the global level. So I'm happy to share with you this my achievement in my field. And with this few words, I think should I start my presentation, Professor Gupta?
Yeah, sure.
Should I start my presentation? Yeah. Can you see?
Ma'am, it will come. Just wait.
Are you able to see?
Ma'am, yes, we are able to see.
But I'm not. I'm not able to see the screen contents.
Can I share?
I think you should start sharing, because there could be some speed issue, which is just moving like this one. So I think Rajni, you can.
Yeah. आप stop sharing करिए, मैं करती हूँ.
हाँ, करिए please. Yeah, thank you, Rajni, for sharing my. Can I have the full screen, or it will remain like this? Yeah. So next slide. Yeah. Next slide. Can I see? Next one. Yeah. Before I start my topic, I would like to introduce all of you with some of the terms which you would be knowing already, or maybe if you want to learn it now, is the agricultural biodiversity, which is also called as the agri-biodiversity or agro-biodiversity. It includes crops and the livestock, their wild relatives, and also those species which are interacting with all those living material, for example, pollinators in plants, symbionts, pests and parasites. This was the definition given by Qualset in 1995. Another definition which is much more important is the plant genetic resources, PGR per se, where they are the crucial component of plant resources for present and future generations of human beings. So the PGR spectrum consists of the land races, which are nothing but the traditional varieties, modern varieties. Along with those crops are the wild and weedy relatives of plants, and potential domesticates, which include wild useful species, which we also would like to call potential species, because those species have been identified for certain potential in them. In addition, I would also like to discuss about the definition of agriculture, means the process of rearing plants and animals, and others like wild tamed plants or animals. Similarly, cultivation is the physical activity relevant to and associated with agriculture. And domestication is the process that leads to the genetic shift to adapt population for better change or artificial environment that is created by a cultivated condition. This was the definition given by Harlan, 1975. Next one. Next slide. To show you a little bit about why Indian region is Indian Himalaya per se and Indian region per se is important. Principal Madam has rightly said that this particular topic is not only confined to the Himalayas. It will be spilling over to other areas also, because the Hindustan Gene Center or Indian Gene Center, what we call as, is the hotspot of biodiversity, in which we have more than 4 hotspots located at the global level. And in this one, Hindustan Gene Center, we have large number of endemic species, which are the reservoir of so many genes which are useful for crop improvement program. We have long list of different taxa which are useful for the human beings. On one side, I'm trying to show this Western Ghats, where this is one of the hotspots where large number of endemic species are located. Another one is the Western Himalayan region, continuing up to the Eastern Himalayan. The entire range is called the Himalayas of India. Himalaya of India, including the Western Himalayan region as well as the Eastern Himalayan region. And Indo-Burma region is one of them. Next one, next slide. When we talk about the PGR management, plant genetic resources management has several activities, right from collection of plants from different areas, their conservation, collection, to evaluate them for the human use, and also exchange with others who want it for the crop improvement program, and many other pests and diseases associated with that one is the total gamut of management, PGR management activities. In the entire gamut, we have the tribal areas that fall under the highest priority or priorities of that management activities. And in this one, we have many times we find that there are large number of areas which have remained unsurveyed or least surveyed because of the least accessibility to those areas, and they have primitive cultivars and also the locally adapted material, which are rich in the trait specific material which we want it in the present day of time when there is a climate change regime, and we want such material to be in our custody. These native diversity is generally represented by the crops of Indian origin generally. For example, brinjal, pointed gourd, Indian round gourd, bitter gourd, and smooth gourd, snake gourd, and many cucumbers, leafy amaranths, and leafy vegetables. When we talk about the spectrum of the tribal forms with the ethnic culture and the ethnic diversity, in the 2011 census of ethnic diversity, it represented about 8.6% of total India's population, which has 705 tribal groups, which are housed in the 6,000 forested villages across the country. Next one. This slide indicates that the tribal regions, they generally showcase the domestication process. What do we mean by showcasing the domestication process? If I say that domestication process, somebody will say that it's not easy to witness that the domestication is happening. It is very true, because domestication doesn't happen in one day or in one generation. It has to continue across the generations to generations from different human generations, and it occurs from time to time, and knowledge and the material is passed on from one to another one, and this happens at that way. So the flow chart shows that when we have some wild economic species, which I have already defined as the wild potential species. Potential means the human have, or the tribal people have identified that material as very useful to the human beings. We also call it as underutilized plants, which are of direct use to them, or maybe directly they can be consumed or utilized, or maybe they can be utilized after selection process and value addition, which can later on lead to the commercialization and reaching to consumers. This is one straightforward pathway. Another pathway is wild economic species by the help of the tribal people is taken to human domain in custody of the tribal people, which we prefer to call as semi-domesticated plants or semi-domesticated species. And we also prefer to call them as species under protection, because in real sense, we are not improving on them. You are just taking that material from wild areas to our human domain, maybe around our forest areas, maybe around our habitation, maybe around the fence we are trying, but we are not improving directly to that particular species. Once we start selecting those ones and start cultivating over generations to generation, selecting important types which are really meeting our requirement, in that way we will call that as the real domesticates coming under the cultivation. And the cultivated species at the advanced level through the intervention of government policies, or also after awareness generation, popularization, and value addition, they are coming into the market. And in this one, the role comes of the social media and advertisement and other grassroots level meetings and grassroots level popularization that can help us for popularization of those plants coming into the domestication process. Here in the photograph, I would like to show you is the one of the vegetable basket. We see that the entire food basket of vegetable does not have any native vegetable here. All are the species, one to all are the species introduced from some other region over the period of time by somebody, maybe Britishers' time or maybe the French time, or people invading our countries have brought this material to us. And now we are enjoying the diversity of this one. This is called the modern food basket. In the contrary, when we visit the tribal areas, we see that these tribal ladies are selling some of the fruits which are directly being harvested from the trees and being sold in the village hearts, which we call as local markets or villages. So the next slide, I would like to show much more. Next one. So how do we identify the tribal areas or the domesticated plant genetic resources diversity? There are a large number of parameters on the basis of which we can identify those tribal areas. First of all, the very significant and the strongest parameter is that there is heavy interdependence of local plant genetic resource material for multi-purpose use. For example, they may be surrounded plants from which they will harvest the fruits. They will lop the leaves for animal feed. Also, they use the wood for burning purpose and for fire purpose. And also, some of the gum exudates from those plants, they use it for the medicinal purpose and all that. So that means the heavy interdependence means plants are dependent on them and they are dependent on plants. And also vice versa for the animals. Also in the same area. The impact of, another point is the impact of rich ethnic diversity and traditional culture is having the close linkage with the ecology and demography. This is one of the criteria. Area which is less influenced from outside environment is one of the very big parameter which can indicate that these are the areas which are cut off from the normal habitations which are surrounded by them. Similarly, all full spectrum of genetic resources, I have already defined in my earlier slide that genetic resources, full spectrum consists of wild species, semi-wild species, and then those semi-domesticated species and fully domesticated species in the form of land races, in the form of fully developed cultivars, which people are utilizing. So you entire gamut of the full spectrum you will find there. Similarly, the trait-specific material where the material will be having some hardy characters, and there are also plant species where they generally do not put many fertilizers. Normally homemade or animal excreta, they are using it for the fertilizers purpose. And additionally, they have the knowledge resources preserved passed on from generations to generations. And this is called the indigenous traditional knowledge or indigenous knowledge. And they also have the knowledge about the environment, when it will rain, when it is going to have heavy storms and all that. They have their own selected parameters. And during our teams interacting with those peoples when they visit during explorations, we gather a lot of such information from the tribal communities. And I would like to share with you that globally, it is not only India. Globally, there are large number of tribal communities which are still gathering and consuming. That means they are the gatherers and consumers. If we visit the tribal areas of Nagaland, we see people, they are having some ornaments prepared from some seeds. See, this Naga tribal is holding this ornament, he's putting on his waist. Similarly, they are making some of the edible products, some edible rice-made products, which they are putting it in the water and preparing some beverages out of it. And there are large number of such plants which are being directly utilized by them. In their festivals also, you will see material of plant origin, and they are part of their festivals and culture. Next one. Next slide, please. Can I have the next slide? Yeah. When we see that large number of species, why I am showing this slide to you is to witness that not only edible plants, they have the medicinal plants important in their region. This is one of the ginger species, the red ginger, which many of them have not seen, and they are available in the tribal areas. This is wild species of Mamodica, which is being harvested from the jungle and is being sold in the Tamil Nadu market. Similarly, in the Uttarakhand area, if somebody has visited Nainital, they must be looking at this material, which is called the Mirika Nagi, which is locally called the Kafal. And they, in the Nainital, and while you are doing the boating, they are generally in the summer months of May, June, they are selling this one. It's one of the Britishers Flora has indicated that this is one of the most tastiest fruit they have ever tasted in their life. That is the description given by other people, and this is a wild harvest by local people. Similarly, this Taurus of lotus is being sold in the West Bengal market, and this Taurus is being sold for the seeds, because in that area they have large number of water bodies, and they are directly harvesting it from the lotus and selling it in the market. So homestead or home gardens are demonstrating the traditional material. And when you visit those tribal areas, when you see their home gardens, you will see large number of species along with the ponds in which they have the fishes, they have the water animals which they are consuming it for food. So this kind of food basket you can examine in those areas. Next one. Tribal areas, how do they demonstrate the PGR management? Cultivation and evaluation. Like multi-crops, they are growing and they are evaluating whether it is suitable for the ecological condition. If some material is getting some kind of natural infestation of any kind of virus, they eliminate that material. So that kind of material they are conserving. And also the on-farm conservation means in their farm itself, they have one corner where the land races which are being passed on from generations to generation, they are preserving that material for keeping it for their rituals, for their self-consumption also, and also for the barter system for exchange with the others. They have large number of other methods by which they are conserving all those material. And also exchange is one of the program in those areas, in the tribal dominated areas. You have a big exchange program happening. How it happens? I'm trying to show you one rice-made wall hanging. It's beautifully made. It is exhibited in my National Herbarium of Cultivated Plants. And if teachers bring students to the National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources Herbarium. I would like to show that's beautifully made by these tribals of Uttar Pradesh. And this kind of hanging after the harvest of landrace paddy in that area, they prepare it and well knit it in this form and hang it on the wall. And when their daughter gets married, and this one wall hanging is given to her, and she takes it to the other villages, and from there they can multiply the material and they can use it for further cultural things. So this is the way their practices, the religious practices, are helping them to conserve the material. And in addition, data information in the form of knowledge, the ritual practices, the ritual customs, and also the local songs and tales they are being utilized. Next one, Rajni. Next slide, please. Can I have the next slide? I think it has got stuck. Can you move the slide further?
रजनी मैम आप एक बार दोबारा से लॉग इन करके देख मे बी इट विल वर्क नाउ
I think अब चलेगा.
I think she is trying to rejoin now.
Yeah. Because of large number of photographs, it is becoming very, very heavy. And in my institution, sometimes the network is very, very slow. So I was not able to do it. So by default, I sent it to Rajni so that if some problem comes up here, I'll be able to take her help. So I think by the time, yeah. I think this is a slide on which I was stuck.
Ma'am,
I think so, yeah. Okay. Can we enlarge it, expand it?
I will try to do so, but if it doesn't work, then we'll have to work with this only.
Okay, then okay. So these are some of the photographs showing how the tribal hearts reflect the food diversity, and this is one of the two photographs show Central and Western India, where we are trying to show that how wild species harvested from the neighborhood areas are being sold in the market. We have large number of such examples where such material are being sold, and there are a long list of material over here. One is Kirini, Manilkara hexandra, Buchanania lanzan, and Mogania vestita in the Khasi and Meghalaya hills, Maduka longifolia and others, and Garcinia indica kokum and others in the Maharashtra and Karnataka region. Next slide, I think we can move to. Next slide. Can we move to the next slide?
Ma'am, I'm trying. I think we'll have to work with the other way only. I mean, with this way, it's not changing in this PowerPoint, full screen.
Okay.
Yamal, should I stop? You are presenting?
Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Because I think it is open at two places. So it's creating a kind of,
Yeah, मैं अभी stop कर रही हूँ.
Stop कर लीजिए, please.
Or else, ma'am, you continue, I'll stop. That's okay. 1 second, let me stop you because in my case, full screen is not coming. So maybe
Okay,
you
okay.
continue, Rajni ma'am.
Okay, okay. Take care.
Yeah. So this slide I have already covered. We can move on to the next slide. Yeah. So the Himalayas as the hotspot. I've already discussed about the wild onions available in the Himalayan region. And from my study, I have recently completed and concluded. We have come to the conclusion that in the Indian region, we have approximately more than 30 species of wild allium, which are awaiting domestication to happen. And some of them, in the next slide, I'll be showing that those species, some of them have already entered into the commercial market. One of them I have already described. And you can see large number of allium species. Some of them I have listed over here. Allium tuberosum is the one, this one. Then Allium prisbliscianum, Allium hookeri, Allium strachyi, which is one of the endangered species which has entered into the red data book. And Allium fasciculatum has been described as one of the first cultivated species from the Indian region. It occurs in the wild, but in the eastern Himalayan region, we reported it for under cultivation by the tribal areas where it has been domesticated. Next one. Yeah, this is one of the success story I have recently concluded. In this one, I would like to show that this particular plant species, Allium negianum, I have named it after one of my colleagues who is no more with us. And he was an allium worker, and he was located in the NDPJ regional station, Bhuwali. So this plant species is named after him. Before 1962, the commercial cultivation of the commercial sale of the material of one of the seasoning alliums was from by the Bhotia tribes in Western Himalayas, and from the Tibet areas these people used to enter into the Indian territory because there was borders were not sealed like as it is now. So those people used to sell the material harvested from their areas, but after 1962 issue war, then this trade just finished, and after that we did not have the material as, and those ethnic people are using this allium species, the leaves of it, for seasoning purpose. So one plant species which was neither that material which was being sold by the Bhotia people, and it was not matching with any of the descriptions given in the literature. And after study by myself and my group, this material, which is being under wild scale cultivation in the Niti Valley of Uttarakhand, we were able to find that it is some species which is closer to one of the species from Leh Ladakh, which is nothing but Allium prisbliscianum, and it is one of the species. So globally, we have added a new taxon to the allium list of wild taxa, and this species is being used by the tribal people. They are growing it in their domain, and it has already been improved, and it is different from the wild species, and a large number of characters, strong smell and strong aroma is there, and they are harvesting and chopping it and selling it in the market across the country, as well as it's being exported to other areas. Next one. Another success story I would like to share with you is the species move from restricted area to the other adjoining region. This is one of the examples, is called the Flamingia vestita, which is Mogania vestita actually in the Meghalayan region. The Khasi tribes of Meghalaya, it is endemic species being grown there, but that species, the Mogania vestita, is wild across the entire Himalayan region, from Western Himalayas up to the Eastern Himalayas, but this particular cultivated and the domesticated species is occurring restricted only to the Khasi Hills. When our explorers went there and collected the material, we had a lot of diversity in the tuber size, and they are selling it in the Shillong market after peeling it And it's a nutty taste which is being eaten with the perilla chutney and salt and chili powder, and is being harvested at that time during October, November, and it's available in the Shillong market. And particularly this material by the Khasi and Jaintia tribes, it's the hill I've tried to show you. So we learned from the literature that this is a heavy rainy area where they have the problem, stomach illness is there. They have stomach disorders because of the worms in particularly children, and there is a recurrence of tapeworm in that area because these tribals are eating pork, a lot of pork they are eating. So they are this particular tuber is their part of their diet. So after having this knowledge by us, what we thought that if this species can work for the nematodes, can we try it for the agriculturally important nematodes? One of such nematode is Melidogyne incognita, which is affecting the root node nematode, and it's affecting large number of crops of the Indian region, agriculturally important species. And we thought that let us try this one. And after making water distillation and the purification of the chemical present in that one, we tried, and will you believe that this was so effective that it could control, and it's the first report published of the anti-helminthitic property of Moghania vestita. It has been already published 2-3 years back, and the paper is already available in the public domain. Next one. Another one, millet, which is Digitaria cruciata, var esculenta, it's locally called raisin, is again being under cultivation in Meghalaya area, and the cultivated forms are taller and having large number of tillers and have good variation amongst the grain size in comparison to the wild type, which is shorter in plants are shorter in height, and shattering of grain takes place. So this minor cereal millet is being occasionally grown sporadically, not in a regular way, in the tribal area under patchy cultivation. So this particular grass is the hardy one, and we have collected a lot of material and is conserved in the gene bank. Next one. Next slide, please. NEH is always a focus for the National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources for PGR importance. And in this area, we have planned 45 explorations with the help of Krishi Vigyan Kendras and the state agricultural departments and agricultural college, where we get number of students with them. And we have been able to visit the hearts of the villages where large number of leafy vegetable, even we do not know the actual botanical name because of our limitation in knowledge. And all these material are either being grown by these tribal in their homes, or maybe being harvested from the wild. So this is to show you how rich are the ethnic peoples of Eastern Himalayan region. Next one. Some significant contributions by our people in the genetic resources. One of the species called Herpetospermum operculatum was described by us in 2017. It's a leafy vegetable sold in the market, and it has never been described from the Indian region, though some of the Chinese literature has named it with a different name. Similarly, one juglans species, the wild walnut species, was a new record for the Indian region from Nagaland area. As far as cultivated diversity is concerned, you have large number of maize types available in that area. They are the local methods of drying, and also one of the Musa puspanguli, a wild relative of banana, was cultivated by our teams from Arunachal Pradesh. Next slide, please. Jhum cultivation is a regular practice in the eastern region, where they are growing, cutting the forested areas, and they are trying, though the practice has now been reduced to a larger extent. But in the Jhum cultivation, they are growing number of traditionally important food products and the wild material. One of them is Parkia roxburghi. It's a tree species which is growing all around the human habitations, and the pots are being used as vegetable. In the markets of those areas, when you visit, you will see this kind of, bunches hanging around. Is very costly. And another one is the Hoxenia heterophyllata. It's a cucurbit. It's again a wild material which is brought to the human protected areas, and it's being used for the oily endosperm from the seeds of the same material. Next one. Many more such examples are there. Large number of brinjal species. Some of them are the Southeast Asian origin, and through porous borders, the material has entered into those areas of Eastern India. Gillo and other brinjal types which are available. Some of them are, if we start tasting them, we feel it bitter, but they are using it in the form of soup and others. One species of Crotalaria tetragona, which is nothing but closest wild relative of the sunhemp. The flowers are being eaten, and they are also growing this one in their homesteads and also selling them in the market. And these are some of the aromatic plants available in the human domain. Next one. Utilization of locally available material from the forest. This is one of the examples saying that domestication may or may not always be possible. There are several reasons. Number one, the topmost reason is that the process of domestication is such a difficult one that only those species which react to, or those species which give response to the domestication or selection process are the one which enter into the process of domestication. Others, those people are growing them around their vegetation and also harvesting them from the wild itself. Several examples are there. One of the fruit of Nux vomica, which is a medicinal plant, being directly harvested from the field area in the Tamil Nadu area, Eastern Ghats, from the Javadu hills, and also the tribal lady is harvesting the fruits and the seeds that she will be harvesting. Similarly, the tamarind is one of the tribal fruit which they are extracting and drying it in different form. Next one. Millets in the tribal areas are showing a lot of diversity. The Ceteria italica, one of the important millets, particularly in all over the India. It's becoming very, very popular now because of its high calcium and iron contents. We have been able to collect right from the light shaded one to the darkest orange one from the tribal areas of Tamil Nadu, again from the Eastern Ghats, tribal dominated areas. Similarly, one of the Kodo millets, which is locally called Varangu and Paspellum scrobiculatum, again from the Tamil Nadu hills. And these are the different types of variation available in the fingers of this foxtail millet. Next one. Chhattisgarh is one of the area which has always remained, our explorers are attracted towards this one. And we have undertaken more than 10 explorations in past 20 to 30 years and been able to collect 100 accessions out of this one. Most of them we were fascinated by collecting because that area is having large number of medicine men who are selling the plant products as well as the products and the seed material also we were able to gather and put it into our gene banks. We are having the direct interaction with those people, right from those material, edible pulses, edible seeds, as well as the material of day-to-day importance. Like these paper plates, they are making from some of the leaves harvested from jungle. Next one. In 2015, I was able to visit to one of the tribal areas of Uttarakhand Himalayas, where we could visit the Tharu tribals. They are much more advanced tribal areas because this area is much more closer to the GB Pant University of Agriculture, Pantnagar. So all varieties are coming, all advanced varieties are also, they are adopting, but at the same time, because of their ethnic culture, they are holding some of the material, and they are still conserving that material in their vicinity. One of such material, we saw that the broom made up of cider species harvested from nearby areas, and they are making the brooms and drying it. We asked them, this such a cheap material, why you are making it? They said that first of all, this material remains okay for more than 2 to 3 years, whereas the market broom is a very short lasting one. So they are making it and drying it in this manner. Similarly, their method of conservation of the freshly harvested wheat or maybe other grains is very, very interesting. The clay made pot is there, where in the bottom side of it, it's a nozzle, and they keep on putting fresh wheat from the top and taking out the seed material from the bottom of it. It was very interesting to see the method in which they are conserving, and they are also preserving it for self-consumption. Next one. In association with the material, the NBPGR is also recording traditional knowledge with these tribal people. I have already indicated the importance of Crotalaria tetragona, which was the first report of cultivation from the NBPGR. Another example is the Bidens pilosa, which in the tribal areas of Ladakh, they are eating it because that area is very, very high, and in high altitude area, they feel a number of throat related problems. And these Ladakhi people are using it for making the Ladakhi tea. And we have published the method by which they are preparing the Ladakhi tea. I have already discussed about one of the cucurbit, which has been described by NBPGR long ago. One of the species which myself have explained and published the information is the organic clearant extracted from Ebelmoschus manihot tetraphilus, which in Tharu areas we were able to witness that the stalk of the mature stem is being used in putting the clearant in the jaggery processing industry at the local level. There are a large number of examples of similar types where it's a big list of material, and we would like to add more knowledge, one-to-one interaction during discussion with you later on. Next one. Coming to more visual graphics in this form, Bhotia tribes in the Uttarakhand areas, we happen to have interaction with those people, how they are passing on their material, transporting them, and also the Uttarakhand area, the Parvati tribe of Uttarakhand, they are dependent on amaranthus for large number of making food items from this one. Similarly, the Jaunsar area of Uttarakhand is one of the study area. Onge tribes of Andaman and Nicobar has recently been visited by one of my colleague from Thrissur, Dr. K. Pradeep. Now presently he was in Delhi, and now he's posted in Thrissur, and they have undertaken about more than a dozen of exploration in that area and have gathered a lot of information from Andaman and Nicobar tribal people. Next one. Next slide, please. Previous one. Can we go to the previous slide? Yeah. So while taking the knowledge, it's not easy to extract information from people because, you know, tribal people are very, very knowledgeable, very, very ethnically rich, and they have a lot of knowledge on all fronts of agriculture and day-to-day life. But extracting information from them, why I have used the word digging? It's a real digging because knowledge is deep into their minds, and to take out information, first of all, we have to spend time with them. We have to expend our motive why we have come, what is our purpose of coming, and then when they become very friendly to us, then only they share the information to us. So this is one of the picture how we take out the knowledge from them during interactive sessions, during visit to the tribal areas. Next one. Yes, I have told you that one of the ongoing project which has just finished is the on-farm crop diversity in the Uttarakhand area of Indian Himalaya, where we selected Jaunsar Babar in Dehradun, Rawai area in Uttarkashi, and Jaunpur area in Tehri. These three areas we were able to move, and during our interactions with those, we found that more than 20% of the local land races of many cultivated they have just finished, they have gone out of cultivation, and out of this one, and out of many of them, some wild species we were able to take out from them, and the material has already been conserved. We undertook several awareness generation programs, generally for the public as well as for students. Next one. Next one. This is one of the glimpses of the Jaunsar tribal area. Their houses, if you see, they are made up of wooden structures, and they are sometimes 3-storied or 1-storied. On the ground floor, they conserve and dry the material and put their animals. On the first floor, they live, and on the top floor, sometimes they use it for the multi-purpose thing. So during 2018, we had a diversity mela where all these tribal people brought their material harvested from their field and other wild material, and we happened to enrich the knowledge by knowing the use of many material which was not at all discussed and referred in the literature. Next one. So tribal and ethnic communities demonstrate the domestication process. I have never said that these tribal or ethnic areas are the site of domestication. They demonstrate means they show the trends of domestication. Trends of domestication means you can see the entire gamut of plant spectrum of the entire diversity. The same species you can see in wild in the areas around, and the same species being under cultivation in that area. And many times you can also see the natural screening is taking place, knowledge resources for their practices of storage, traditional method of storage, and nutraceutical value, and collection and conservation methods are really giving us a lot of information which we are utilizing in our genetic resource conservation program. Next one. There are large number of priority species, because if I start listing, we start with 10,000 or more than that taxa, which are ethnobotanically important, or they are important or known for their value. But in some way we have to short down and bring them to the lower one so that we can start doing the R&D and start doing what I have said, that we can select them and utilize them, and we can directly consume them and bring it to the market. So the prioritization is a must. So it depends upon how priority has been done. In our institute, we have taken it down to the baseline of 200 taxa, whereas the baseline of wild edible species during the earlier time, we have more than 1,500 taxa available in the public, where out of which only less than 1% are under cultivation. Next one. So what are the way we can move ahead? There are large number of success stories from each and every tribalhood. We have large number of, today we are talking about quinoa introduction from outside. But when we see Chenopodium album, which is indigenous to India, it has higher nutritional contents as compared to the Chenopodium album, which is available to our country. Similarly, we have highly rich anti-cancerous plant species, which is called as Coptis tita, also called as the Mishimi tea. This has been recently collected by one of my colleagues, and we'll be trying the tissue culture of this one. So we have large number of success stories. Unless we have all this in the strong linkages with the markets, unless we involve the home science departments for more popularization of the material, and also R&D in case of specific ones if we undergo, then only we'll be able to do further advancement into this field. Of course, public awareness, like the fora which Professor Rajni Gupta has made my day special for along with you, where all the participants, more than 68 participants, are listening to what I'm saying. So after making the public awareness, generating through such kind of presentation, such kind of fora, and also different sessions and different melas and also exhibitions where we can bring the people know more about it. Similarly, tribal festivals in the local area, agro-tourism is now coming up. I have told you about the Mogania Vestita when in the October month, large number of people from abroad visit India during the month of October and November. And they are much more familiar with Bogania vestita. If you read in the web about the Soflong, locally called Soflong, when you go through the literature, large number of people know about the Soflong story, whereas we Indians hardly know about our own material. Next slide I can share. So do the tribal areas need our attention, particularly when I talk about the PGR relevance? Yes, definitely, because the global data is suggesting that there is a decline in nutritional quality of food. So the tribal areas have tremendous potential. I have listed large number of such examples in front of you, where there is a need to prioritize those species which are being shown and discussed with you, and large number of them, because in the changed climatic scenario, will be depending on other species which are presently available, may or may not be able to sustain. At that time, we'll be needing other species which at least we can try them and do R&D on. Next one. So PGR management ahead, everything I have already narrated, not to repeat it now. Next one. So with this one, I can come to the end of my presentation. So the discussion point after my presentation would be focusing more on domestication process. Have you ever seen some of the examples where you have seen that you have seen the domestication process happening? Similarly, have you encountered some of the plant species which in your childhood you have seen, but now you do not see them in the market? One of the reasons could be that now the advancement of the areas and from rural to the urbanization, those species have become and have gone to the backbench. Those could be the reason, but there could be large number of examples we can share and have interactive session through that example. And also, would you be knowing a large number of such knowledge with you, knowledge examples with you, where your grandmother used to share large number of plant materials during their time and they are not available now. So we have many other discussion points on which we can go on and on. And with this one, now last slide is the thank you slide, saying that the purpose of showing this entire beautiful slide is the banana flowers, the fruit which is widely available, medicinal use, some the shuklai, the organic jaggery clearant, and also the Solanum pimpernellifolium, which is now being grown by the tribal people. I was surprised to see in the Tharu areas they were growing it. I don't know how come. And also the lilies, which are edible, and other medicinal plants of tulsi and other wild tulsi which are coming up. So I would like to conclude my talk now, and I request, and I would like to thank, last slide, thank the organizers for inviting me for this topic of interest and which is very close to my heart, and also all the audience for patient listening, for all photo credits to all my explorers, and my colleagues in the ICR and the PGR for having time-to-time discussion in enhancing my knowledge. With this one, I request the organizers to stop sharing and we can have an interactive session with all the students and the participants with you.
Thank you, ma'am, for enlightening young minds with valuable information.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Listen to this, all of us have now got a clear understanding on the subject. Thank you so much, ma'am. There are a few questions that have come up on the chat box from the participants.
Yeah,
I would request Shubham to please take up those questions.
yeah.
अक्षरा पीपीएस सर है, रेज द हैंड। सर आप पूछिएगा क्वेश्चन या आपको जो भी बोलना है सर आप बोलिए।
नमस्कार सर।
नमस्कार अंजना जी, नमस्कार।
हाँ
Pleasure
सर को
listening to you.
आज इस फोरम में देख के आई एम सो हैप्पी एंड थ्रिल्ड।
आपने तो मेमोरीज इतनी अच्छी रिवाइव कर दी है मेरी।
हाँ
I
जी,
can narrate just 2 instances for you.
थैंक यू।
20 years ago,
या
I spent a lot of time in Katarnia Ghat,
हाँ अच्छा
Dudhwa,
हाँ
meeting tribals
ओके
and discussing minor forest products.
हाँ
There was such a vast amount of knowledge to get from them
या
that I was really boggled with information. I
Yeah.
did not know how to present the data when it was required for the project. But you see, there is so much to learn from these people,
एग्जैक्टली
and folklore taxonomy has taught us so much more,
या
that these folks have a real wealth of information.
वेल्थ ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन
I would say that when you lose one member of the tribe,
या
we've lost a whole library of knowledge,
Exactly.
knowledge. So collecting this information and putting into practice for betterment of society is very important. Another instance of which I want to relate is more than 70 years ago, as a young child, I have seen cultivation of ragi myself in our own house, in the backyard of our bungalow, and right from plowing the land, sowing the seed, harvesting the crop, I have seen as a young child and realize what significance it had for the poor people at that time. Wheat was cheap at that time. I remember as a young child, we could get more than 2 kilos or 3 kilos of wheat and for 1 rupee. But the local poor people could not even afford that. Rice also was about 2 kilograms per rupee. But for them, ragi was more important because you could get 10 kilograms of ragi for 1 rupee. So the importance of these millets and these grains is so much more for the tribals that they have protected it for us. And now ragi is one of the most expensive crops in our society. So how times have changed. But what is important is that we must continue to learn. And your presentation has helped me so much to revive my old memories. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure joining this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Geeta ma'am is also there. I think she must like to speak something, ma'am. Geeta ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking me to join. I am really impressed with what you have presented, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
It is absolutely wonderful, and it is very thought-provoking, because what we need to do is to bring all these things into mainstream of life. And just by saying that the traditional knowledge and what has come from the grandparents is what is good, the new generation is not taking that.
Going to accept it, yeah.
So what we have to do is we have to rope in some diet planners, and make them put these things into the diet. As soon as they came to know that millets are good and ragi is good, just like sir has just said, everybody has started adding ragi to their dosas. So this way we have to find the right people to push in what we want to do. Because just by saying that traditional is good is not going to really help the new generation, because they are so much influenced from the West. They are happy to eat all kinds of food which we really can't even, my generation and sir generation, we can't even name those foods, and they are eating that every day. I can eat maybe some variation like pasta or something once in a while, but instead of roti I can't eat it every day. So if my roti gets those things which we want to popularize, so that is the kind of approach I think that I am able to think about. You have really made lots of minds thinking, and you have done a wonderful job. Beautiful pictures. Thank you so much. And thank you, Rajni, for giving me chance to speak.
Thank you.
You deserve it, ma'am. Anyone else want to say anything? Akshara, you can ask the question in the chat box. There are some queries.
From the chat box, you can read the questions and discuss about it. Because sometimes the question may be there, but we are hesitant to ask whether this is worth asking the question or not. It may not show our ignorance also. Sometimes we feel hesitant to discuss about it. And I would like to share and agree with Dr. Geeta
Ma'am,
Mathur,
there are a few
Professor Geeta
questions
Mathur,
which
is
are
that I was discussing about the anti-helminthitic property of that tuber, Mogania vestita. What we have also done is that I thought if it is anti-helminthitic being eaten by those tribal area, I cannot force my children to eat it. But since it is having the high medicinal value, so what we did was we brought kilos and kilos of tubers from the Khasi Hills, from one of the regional stations located in Shillong there. So we got the material, we tried to make the powder using proper temperature and all that, and we mixed up 50% of that one. It's having a nutty taste, very beautiful nutty taste. And after mixing it with the chocolate balls, small chocolate balls we prepared. And I was thinking that our kids, generally small kids, they are very fond of chocolate and all that, and they have the problem of stomach, ascaris and other one. So this could be one of the, so I requested, because we are not from the pharma departments, but I requested my biochemistry department to take hold of this work, and they can make it much more publicly viable project for the pharma. They can give the idea. So that can happen, because by doing that one, we'll be helping tribals in one way, and secondly, we are popping the those those pills, for getting rid of this one. So including that one in our daily life, we can always get rid of such problem, particularly for our children.
Great idea, ma'am, and greater that it was implemented. That's
yeah.
Sir, आपको कुछ कहना है? हाँ जी sir.
You have reminded me of Professor Mohan Ram's statement when we were in MSc.
Yeah.
Cornflakes was invented to disguise the taste of milk because children didn't want to drink milk. So they give it in cornflakes and they will take it. So from cornflakes, they come to Kellogg's and so much more. And now all the cornflakes are chocolate. More or less chocolate. So how we have to change thinking process to ensure that the right requirements of the body are met in our diet, in whatever form we may give it.
Exactly.
So that is what is important.
Yeah, sure.
So it's good to add to our knowledge always.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Ishita Devnath, you want to say?
I think their course botany is being taught to them to a greater extent.
Ethnobotany just a topic in economic botany, but it is very useful for their UPSC. Most of the students opt this paper for their UPSC final year.
Okay.
Entrance ना, तो it's very useful for them.
Exactly.
हाँ, ये और बहुत ही आपने मतलब informative बताया ही है. शुभम आप please question पूछिए.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, the question is, urbanization is increasing and tribal people are migrating to the urban areas. Thus, tribals leaving behind the ethnobotanic plants of their area behind. Thus, this immigration can pose threat to PGR and leave those ethnobotanic species unrecognized. Ma'am, question.
What is your question? Actually, less sound is coming. So I'm not able to follow your question.
Okay, ma'am, I'm asking again. Ma'am, urbanization is increasing.
Yeah.
And tribal people are migrating to the urban areas.
Exactly.
So, ma'am, thus these tribals leaving the ethnobotanic plant of their areas behind. Ma'am, so does this immigration can pose threat to PGR?
Actually, it's indirectly related. If we want to have advancement and modernization, so-called, we'll have to do it at one cost or the other. But I'm happy to share with you that in one of the on-farm conservation project, which we have just finished in the area of Uttarakhand, where I have discussed with you, shown you the slides also, their farmers are so rich and earning organic farming they are doing. And many young people like you here in the Babar area and Tarai area of Uttarakhand, we ourselves have witnessed that a demand, a person in between, he's creating a demand for organic rice and organic wheat, and they are putting up the demand and they are growing it, and it is coming into the market, being flooded with the market in Nainital area and also Dehradun and Haldwani areas, all those areas surrounded by. So, and also while our visit to those areas, we found that the younger people like you, they are saying that one MBA student, MBA person met us, and he was practicing the farming of their forefathers. And in the land, they are also conserving seed in a simplified way, putting them in the boxes, and also looking out into the value of that, evaluating that material of worth it. So seed companies are coming up. For example, if in the climate change, who knows, after 20 years, like it has happened in the Corona period also, many of the plant-based products have got a hype, big hype. We do not know what is going to happen after 50 years. So if we are talking about the material which is having some kind of resistance in that one, and if people start asking for that material, will we be able to provide the material without multiplication? We'll have to depend on these people for multiplication of the material. So it is the government to make the plans, government to make policies. We are here to put our words to the authorities, higher authorities, and they have the role to implement it. So it may happen, and let me tell you, that our ethnic culture is such a hard thing that it will not die so easily. Like, for example, if I have, for past 60 years, I have been migrated to Delhi, I have been born and brought up in the conditions of Delhi, everything Delhi. But when I moved to my village, I belong to Uttarakhand. When I moved to my villages, I'm so much fascinated. So these routes will definitely bring the people to their native areas. I'm not talking about the ethnic people. I'm not talking about the tribal people. If you visit the eastern Himalayan region, they are so conservative people. They are not ready to eat anything other than what they like. The method of preparation, their likes and dislikes are very fixed one. So it's not easy to say that the tribals will go away. No, it is not easy. But definitely there is a change in the trend. It may take time. And I hope that our government takes proper action well on time before it is lost. And if it is lost, we cannot do anything. For that is our institute, that we are going door to door to collect such material. And whatever is being indicated that it is going out of cultivation, we are trying. In that area, in the Babar area of Uttarakhand, I have told you, say about 12 such land races of wheat, they had gone out of cultivation. For past 30 years, no farmers were growing. So we collected it from a group of farmers and distributed to the adjoining farmers. And they happily shared the material and they start growing it. So the very purpose of our saving this one is indicated. It should be very clear to the person concerned. That is what I would like to. So I hope I'm able to satisfy for your question.
Thank you, ma'am. You very beautifully.
Okay,
Thank you, ma'am. You very beautifully answered the question. Our next question in the chat box is by Yamal ma'am. What were the compounds that were present in the tubers that were responsible for anti-helminthic properties?
Exactly, because our biochemistry unit was involved in this one. So at this moment, I will send that paper to Madam Rajni Gupta. She will share it with you, okay? Exactly, I'm not remembering actually. Yeah.
Okay,
Ma'am,
ma'am.
Although I was a part of that paper, but I really.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, the next question is from Yes. He asks that what strategies can we adopt for conservation of genetic resources in the era of climate change?
First of all, let me say that one strategy we cannot adopt. We'll have to adopt multiple strategy, because I have told you that plant species are not very simple to tackle with. Some of the species do very well if we take the XC2 conservation. In the XC2 conservation, many of them can directly be dried and put into the gene bank. I hope you know about the gene bank located in the NBPGR Pusa campus. It is the second largest gene bank which is conserving. We have the website also. We can visit the National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources website. And also you can, and I think your teachers can bring you here and you can visit the gene bank what we are, but not now because of the corona, we are not allowing people to visit, but later on you can think of. So we can conserve it in the XC2 mode. Sometimes the species, if cannot be conserved during using the drying methods, it can be also done through the tissue culture or in vitro procedures, and also sometimes in the in situ conditions. In situ conditions are difficult simply because they are ultimately dependent on the weather conditions or the person who is holding that land. So in situ, we have the regional stations located in different agroclimatic conditions. So for conserving a species, we have to adapt more than one method per se and do that work for conserving plant genetic resources in times to come. And that is the only purpose, that is one of the important aspects of Plant Genetic Resources Organization, where conservation is one of the prime motive for this one. Yeah.
Previously, we were visiting NBPGR. So many times we have gone there.
Yeah, I know.
But
Rajni used to bring
Corona, we are not visiting anywhere now.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
previously, so many times we have
Yeah,
gone.
I know.
Thank you, ma'am. It will be a pleasure to visit when this period ends.
Yeah, definitely. You're most welcome.
Yes, ma'am. The next question is by Rajni, ma'am. Ma'am, up to what extent Zoom is still practiced owing to the negative impact of the same? And what impact does it have on the soil biota?
Okay. When we talk about the transgenic material, Rajni very well knows there are large number of issues at the government level and others. Once we talk about the tribal material or maybe some plant-based material which we are trying to conserve in the soil, generally it is understood that plants have their own cope-up mechanism. All of the plant have the allelopathic effect, and you already know that rhizosphere biology and other things. Most of the time they are able to sustain themselves very well. So there have to be case-to-case studies per se, and survival and bringing those plants to the wider domain is still the area where we can. For example, I gave you the example of our success story of bringing the wild allium species, Allium nagianum, to our Bhuali station, which is located at the height of say about 2,000 meters, and at the very high height of 10,000 meters, where it is being cultivated at the largest scale, and the Niti Glacier and the Milan Glacier area where it is actually occurring wild. So all those habitations are different. The microflora, the soil flora would definitely be different, but the plant develop their own mechanism. They keep on changing as per, and that is where the role of domestication practices come into. And what I understand that is what I call the response of the plant to the domestication process. And if the response is positive, then the plant keep on adapting itself. If the plant doesn't respond and it doesn't want to come out of the forest area, we can't do anything. And the tribals have to go back to the forest to harvest it. Not the plant example, but I would like to share with you, because once 2004, I was writing an article on domestication. I read a lot of literature, not only plant literature on domestication, but I also happened to read literature on the animal domestication. Then I was very much surprised because generally, by virtue of my discipline in botany, I did not read much about the domestication of animal, though we know much about it, but specific cases, case to case, we do not know. We have been able, there was a very interesting example that we were able to domesticate cows, we were able to domesticate horse, we were able to domesticate large number of other animals which they are presently a part of us, livestock. But so far, we have not been able to domesticate the zebra, which has more horsepower as compared to, the energy level is more higher than that of the horse. And horse domestication, human being always wanted to, and because of the energy and taking it into the use. We, so far till today, nobody is able to domesticate zebra simply because of the fact that zebra has a very strong peripheral vision. The moment you start putting anything and some enemy is coming, it starts going in the other direction. Whereas that peripheral vision in case of horse is comparatively very poor. So that was the reason that taming the horses was simpler as compared to bringing the zebra and other animals into the human. Same is true for the plants. Though plants cannot move, but the plants, if we bring them to our domain, they will die. Nothing will happen. So that is the way I have always in my classroom lectures with the MSc student, I have always tried to say that domestication process takes, say, about 4 to 5 steps they have indicated. The very first step is wild. Second one is the semi-wild, then protected, and then semi-domesticated and domesticated. And the last one is the domestication, which is under cultivation. So everything changes. Not only the place doesn't change, the plant physiology itself changes. And in the physiology comes the role of your microflora. So I hope I'm able to give the answer near to your query.
Thank you, ma'am, for answering the question. Ma'am, the next question is from Swati Singh. She asks that is any
Shubham, I think Shubham, just a minute. I think Dr. Anjula will be tired because
not tired.
कोरोना से पीड़ित होके चुकी हैं. I think उन्होंने इतना
now I'm perfectly okay.
Sure. We can continue.
Sure. I can address. No, it's a good chance to interact with people. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Shubham, continue.
You can ask
yes,
questions.
Ma'am, the question is any organized sector working in the promotion of commercialization of the tribal products?
Yeah, there is a department, tribal, they call it, what was the name? I don't. There is a body, and which is doing a lot of practices they are doing. Tribal tribunal, they are calling it. And that takes care of the entire, their problems and their issues and others. There is a separate tribunal. And I think in the net, if you search, you will be able to see their activities and how they are connected. Yeah, they are actively working towards the upliftment of tribal people. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I think Swati has got her answer. Ma'am, should we take up more questions now?
Yeah, sure. You can have.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ma'am, so the next question is from Rigzin. She asked us that the ethnobotanic species must have hidden treasures of medicinal properties. Ma'am, we want to ask how much potential does this species have in regards to treatment of ailments?
Treatment of?
Ailments or diseases.
Diseases, okay. I think I can partly satisfy by giving the example of so many plant species relating to ethnobotany. Sometimes it has been very well said that ethnobotany means plants, its uses, the medicinal uses of plants, knowing the plant products and utilization of us. Like, for example, if I talk about the Ayurvedic culture, in Ayurveda, it's nothing but those plant products have been identified by the people and they have entered into one of the medical science which has entered. So the value of the ethnobotany directly, and sometimes by knowing the compound and mimicking that compound and turning that compound into some chemical compound and making it in the form of the chemical medicines which are presently being utilized. So both ways things are going on. But unfortunately, if I talk about ethnobotany per se, or if I talk about Ayurveda, everybody questions about its efficacy. The reason is, if I say that you have to take so many leaves per day of a plant which to get rid of your cold and all that, normally in the household, you know that we are using tulsi and adrak and all that. If there is a serious ailment, in that case, the efficacy of the plant is simply not very sure because of the, sometimes if the plant, we are harvesting it for curing the material, we do not know whether the old leaf is having that component in which quantity, or that compound will be present in the youngest one. We do not know whether in which season the chemical compound will be more, in which season it will be less. That kind of research output is missing in this branch of science, and that is how the Ayurvedic science is generally being criticized at many forums. If we talk about, say, about the Giloy or Amla juice and others, all these are the ethnic products itself, and which have come into the commercial market and being utilized. But these days, a little bit of R&D is also being done by the organization like Himalayan Drug and other people, they are doing it. But the efficacy for the serious disease is still a big question. So in that case, I do not know whether to say that ethnobotany will be able to replace or ethnobotany, but definitely, yes, ethnobotany can generate a lot of information, particularly for the region like India, where people cannot afford the advanced medicines which are so costly. So, for example, the Mishmi tea, the Coptis theta, which has become totally endangered. During the visit by one of my explorer, he said that the entire hill region, the Mishmi area in Arunachal Pradesh, he said total hill is barren now, where it used to be in a big, large population was there. But now it is totally gone because it is being harvested by the tribals, and from that area it is going to China. So that way things are very, very potentially, and that Mishmi tea is said to be very potent for some kinds of cancers. So those important things we'll have to research upon. And if China can take our material through this channel, why can't we do the research? So our pharmacy industry has to come forward. But again, the question of, the benefit ratio, the economic benefit ratio, the business thing comes into picture, which we cannot help. So how we can go further ahead, that government has to fix up some policies. But at the same time, we cannot leave this subject without attending. Yeah.
Ma'am, there is a question by Geeta ma'am that whether there is any linking with the Ayush program.
Yeah, definitely with Ayush, we have in my division, Dr. K.C. Bhatt is a person who is in their board. And also Dr. Reena Gupta in the conservation division, she is attending the regular meeting of Ayush board, where when they are prioritizing the plant list, so our people are directly giving the feedback. So we are in their advisory also. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is by participant Kritika. She has asked, we have many species of great importance growing in wild. Is it okay to bring them into some protected area and use them for human benefits?
Which plant she is talking about? Which
Kritika,
plants?
can you please come up and tell the name of the plant?
Good afternoon, ma'am. I was talking about like we are having many medicinal plants and wild plants like hisalu and kafal, etc. So is it okay to bring them into protected areas and use them for human benefits?
I think you are from Uttarakhand, so you are talking about hisalu and all.
Yes, ma'am. I belong to
Yeah, you
Uttarakhand.
belong to Uttarakhand. Yes, definitely they are being shifted to the protected areas, definitely. But I have told you earlier in my earlier questions that plant has its own mechanism. It may accept the changed climatic scenario, it may not accept. And sometimes it may grow in the changed condition, but the fruiting and flowering does not happen. So plant itself has a strong stress to the changed environment. And we are talking about the medicinal plants. Medicinal plants have the alkaloids, steroids, and the secondary metabolites, which are their active components. And as a result of the stress, there is a direct correlation. So to say only to demonstrate, if you want to bring them, they can come to any domain, it's per se. And let me add to your question. Since this topic is regarding the domestication process, okay, so mind you, you should never be confused. Talking about that, all plants from the jungle, if you bring and start growing them in the public domain or in your human domain, they are domesticated. No, medicinal plants are like that. In medicinal plant, we are growing them, we are eating leaves of it for certain remedy, and we are using something for something, but it doesn't mean that the species has been domesticated. Same is true for the avenue trees. Domestication word should be rightly used only when we are undertaking a kind of selection process. Then only we'll be able to say that the wild species was like this. From the wild species, gradually it has moved down to the human domain, and we have selected the same thing for the quality for which we are wanting. So if we are selecting the plant material for any medicinal use, and over the generations we are improving upon it, so then we can say it is. So most of the medicinal plants are that they have been brought from somewhere and have been planted, and many times we are able to successfully grow them in the botanical gardens because we only want to demonstrate. But if we want to utilize it for the purpose of medicinal use or maybe some other use, you will have to study its R&D, whether really it is potential or not. I have 3 years, maybe 3 to 4 years back, I could capture one of the plant species which came to me for identification. One of my staff members brought it from Bihar, just a small stick of plant, and he says, for the diabetes, ma'am, this one is being used in Bihar area, and its leaves are being used, and 2 leaves in the morning, 2 leaves in the evening, and that sugar is gone, and we are not using the other medicine and all that. I thought maybe many Hakims and Jula Chap doctors, they may be encouraging the poor people like this. But I was very much anxious to know about the plant species. Since it did not have leaf, it did not have, but the stick was having, it was showing the live status. I just planted it in my pots, in my experimental garden, and suddenly, after a while, the leaves started coming, and our leaves started growing. Still we could reach up to the level of the genus, and when it just grew and we could note it, because the flowering did not happen till 5 years. So later on we reached up to a conclusion that this species was Vernonia amygdalina, which is called as the African bitter leaf tree. When we searched the literature, we saw that this particular species is native of Africa, where the leaves are being tied up in the form of bundles and being sold in the market, just like we sell the palak and other leafy vegetables in the market. And they have 2 types of plants. One is less bitter type and the more bitter type. And in every household, they are growing the plant, that plant. Then I started becoming much more anxious, and I put one of my students on job. What we did was, first of all, we started starting the grow out, because if I say that's a medicinal plant, I should know how we can grow it. So one experiment I put it, can I multiply it through cuttings? And in that one, I set up some experiment, which season will be the best for multiplication. So I could start doing that one, that I could succeed. Second part was that we identified the number of leaves, age of the leaves, location of the leaves, and analyze the content of this alkaloid. So this Vernonia, vermicillin was the chemical compound, and that was a glycoside compound, which is really known to, and that when we read the literature, already in the global literature, they were discussing about the antimicrobial activity, antibacterial activity, anti-cancerous activity, and so many activities was there. But anti-diabetic property, I myself, in one of my family members is having the, because we are not the doctors, we cannot recommend that you start eating this one. If something happens to somebody, it will be a problem for us. So what I did was, somebody closer to me, we started doing this one. And really, I tell you that it is so effective material, and we conserved it through the tissue culture, and also we conserved and planted so many trees in our campus, and the material is still with us. And I'm trying that if some of the pharma industry, I also approached to Swami Ramdev Center for popularization of this one. But the problem with this one is it's so bitter that if you start putting it into your mouth, your taste buds are gone. So I thought that we can produce it in some form of the capsules and all that. And also, so when we analyzed the chemical part of it, we found that there was not drastic difference between the terminal leaf, the lower leaf, and only with the weight, this much gram giving this much value. So it was very, and seasonally also, the leaf did not vary in its contents. So we were very much satisfied that it can be definitely entered into the market. But since we had to introduce it into the public domain through some resources, and people like pharma industries can take it further forward, then only this will become. So our research is well published. And that is how I'm giving you that, only giving that kind of example that it will become potential or not is not the answer. For medicinal plant particularly, you have to conduct that kind of experiment, whether it's really having a secondary metabolite for which it is known. So this is the answer to your question, I suppose.
Yes, ma'am. Regarding what you said, there's a question by Shikha ma'am, where we can see these ethnobotanical explorations and achievements year-wise. Is it available on NBTGR website?
Actually, in my institution, ethnobotany per se is a part of exploration. Okay, when we are visiting different areas, but there is an institute of ethnobiology located in Lucknow. Dr. Pratipal Singh will be knowing. He already knows. Our teachers and Professor S.K. Jain, who